This is GS77, a synth I made in Plugdata. The idea behind it was to make a granular synth, but with an oscillator as the sound source, as opposed to an audio file. The way GS77 works is by using a looping envelope and having the parameters change with each cycle of the loop. So each grain will have slight differences in pitch, timbre, and volume. It also has discrete processing chains for each voice with polyphony and unison. So if you're playing a triad with 5 voices enabled, there are 15 different grain engines playing uniquely randomized audio. I'll go over what all the parameters do one by one, ignoring some obvious stuff like the volume control. And note that any parameter that says random means its value will change with every cycle of the amp envelope. And the same applies to the octaves, RFX amount, and RFX dry-wet parameters, which are not labeled random but also change with each loop. At the top, you'll see the unison settings, which control the voices. All of these should be familiar, but the unison pan works slightly differently to other synths. The pan random setting will change the stereo position of the voices in reference to the unison pan. So if you have both the unison pan and the pan random set to 100, grains will only play in the randomized stereo positions between the 2 unison voices beside them, or between one voice and hard pan, in the case where it's a unison voice on the outside of the unison spread. Next, we have the envelope parameters. There are standard envelope settings for the attack, hold, and decay, as well as a delay setting to control the time between envelope cycles. Additionally, there are random values, which display the maximum amount of time that can be added with each cycle. To the right of the envelope settings, there is a small GUI that will display the minimum and maximum envelope shapes. The dotted line displays the volume of a grain where every randomized parameter rolls the highest value, which is the value displayed on the GUI, and the solid line shows the opposite. The slope control adds an exponential curve to the envelope that isn't randomized, which can also be seen on the GUI. Next, we'll look at the effects section. The RFX select parameter loads a randomized effect that will change with each cycle. There are 6 in total, with the first box being just the dry signal of the synth with no effect. The rest of the effects, in order, are downsample, soft clip, overdrive, hard clip, wave folding, and wave warping. The RFX amount and RFX dry wet are both maximum values of the effect that are randomized for each grain. In the pitch section, at the bottom right, we have the octave settings, which changes the octave of the note with each cycle. And the pitch glide is a constant value that interpolates the frequency when jumping to different octaves. The reverb section is also static. It's just a simple reverb at the end of the processing chain, but I would highly recommend using an external reverb. Lastly, there's the oscillator section. There are 4 basic wave shapes, with various ways of interpolating between them using the slider. Notably, when set to a square wave, you can push the slider further to change the pulse width. The shape's random setting will change the wave shapes with each cycle, but only to the right of the current shape. So with the oscillator shape set to 0% and the shape random set to 100%, every cycle will have a different waveform from any part of the wavetable. However, if you were to set the oscillator shape to 75%, giving a square wave, and keep the shape random setting at 100%, you would only get different pulse width oscillator shapes. The GUI to the right of the oscillator section will cycle through all positions of the wavetable that are possible when the shape random is turned up. There is a free VST version with only 3 voices in the description and on my Patreon, where you can also find the full VST version as well as the Plugdata version, which has a better GUI and far more features than either VST version. If you have any problems, please leave a comment and I will do my best to solve them. If you have feature requests, particularly for the built-in effects, please feel free to leave suggestions.